the retail march to Omnichannel 2.0 for the next normal. So with that, I think as the setup is almost completed, I will go ahead and invite our moderator first onto the stage. All right, so we're good to go. So let me go ahead and invite the moderator for this session. We have with us the Chief Growth Officer for Yellow.ai, who is Mr. Neil Burman. Could we have you on the stage, please? Thank you for joining us today. Joining him, we have Mr. John Strickland, who's the Director, India, Middle East and Emerging Markets for Board International. Joining them, we have Vipul Mathur, who is the Vice President for Modern Trade and E-Commerce, Hindustan Unilever Limited. We also have Raghav Verma, the co-founder for Chayos. Narendra Pratap Singh, Director, Samsonite South Asia. Pramod Arora, Chief Growth and Strategy Officer, Enabler for PVR. And Sadashiv Nayak, Board Advisor for Organic India and an ex-CEO for Big Bazaar. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you, Mr. Burman.
Thank you so much. And rightly said, if there is anything that can challenge what's going to come out of this session is the lunchtime. I think we are just fighting the lunchtime, and I hope the food for thought that's going to come out of this session is going to be enough for you to stay long, another 45 minutes, and we'll keep the discussion interactive. There's some great topics which will be discussed during the panel, and of course we can also take questions from the audience at the end of the panel. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll start with the esteemed panelists here. So thank you everyone for joining. John, I would like to start with you. There are two catchphrases that is there in the topic for discussion. One is Omnichannel 2.0, and the other is a new normal. So both this talk about transformation. I'm sure you would have observed transformation from very early days, and you have first-hand information to the recent trends at home itself. So why don't you share some stories about how you have seen transformation happen?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So my background, I've been in data for all of my professional life. And I remember I was living in Belgium, in Brussels, and I could see this little emerging technology called SGML. And that was the standard generalized markup language, one of the mother languages of HTML, the language that we now use for the internet. So I thought this internet thing in 1995 was going to be quite big. So I said to my parents, I'm going to leave Brussels, I'm coming back to the UK, and I'm going to set up an internet business. My mother was obviously very pleased that her little boy was coming back, and my dad, I remember my dad saying, you're an idiot. We've got the fax machine that does that, electronic data interchange. Anyway, I disregarded their advice, and I set up an internet business. And the first customer that I put online was the London Stock Exchange. Now, there was no internet access in London, and I presented it in hard copy. If you click here, this happens. If you click here, this happens. If you click here, this happens. Because there was no internet access in London. Now, I have two teenage girls. And in my lifetime, we've seen that evolution over 30 years of what the power of data, what the power of technology, what the power of the internet, how it's transforming the landscape. So I just wanted to set that as a seed for people to get an understanding of embracing change. When people talk about digital transformation, jump in. Don't be frightened. Don't be shy. Don't be frightened of those challenges, because everybody said, oh, the internet, that'll never catch on. But look, everybody in the room has a smartphone. You cannot imagine the world today without a connected device.
Thanks, John. Thank you so much. At the backstage, we were having a very interesting conversation, and one statement that came out of Raghav that's going so on my Twitter that said, we are heading to a world where without internet you won't be able to have chai. So Raghav, on that, I wanted to ask you that by 2024, India's retail and e-commerce industry is expected to increase about 84% and rise to about whopping $11 billion. And this change will be driven primarily by how end customers are changing their buying habits. So according to you, what other trends do you see pick up that will accelerate this transformation?
So I think, Neil, two big trends that I see, especially after COVID, one of those trends, and I'll talk a bit about that. I think convenience today is trumping all other buying behavior. You want the best selection in the least amount of time where you are right now, and you know the for us it's been a learning of how do we continuously get closer to the customer. And we started off with our chai delivery in 2015. At that point of time, it was based on a very small insight that people were ordering into their offices, and we used to take those like steel Milton flasks, and we used to deliver chai with that. And we realized maybe we need a more elegant solution to this. Today, about 70% of our orders come from homes. So people are ordering their chai home as opposed to making it, which is just representative of the kind of importance that convenience has for the customer today. The other thing is that maybe 20 years back, it was all about the West. It was all about aping the West. It was all about the West being aspirational for us. Still holds true to some extent, but today there's a renewed pride in the country in all things which are Indian. I think people are wearing their patriotism on their sleeve much more today. People would be more comfortable. I think 20 years back, saying that I'll go to a chai cafe and I'll have an adrak chai as opposed to having a cappuccino, that would have been unheard of. So I think these two trends, and I'm talking about my context, but then this of course goes into retail, e-commerce as well.
Thanks, Raghav. Narendra, I mean, Samsonite as a brand had done many breakthrough, revolutionary inclusions in the traditional retail space. We've briefly spoken about that. How do you see technology playing a disruptor, or do you still see technology just being a mere enabler in the transformation that retail will go through?
Neil, I believe, not by virtue of a theoretical understanding, but the practical experiences, that the technology has to be an enabler. It needs to help you to do things better. It should not be just replacing an idea which is already working well. For example, if at all I have got a drill machine and a nail and a hammer to put a nail on the wall, and with these equipments, if my job is happening well, I need not to bring a robot. Because why should I need a robot? Just because there is a technology available? Why do I make more investment and make it more cumbersome when things are happening well? So I'm not against the idea of using technology. We are using in a very selective manner, not just going overboard and get into technology because there is a technology available. So that is the only difference we are trying to maintain. And like, for example, forecasting, we use hugely. The technology is used very smartly. However, for example, there is a tech platforms available to sell our product. But we are not trying to replace our physical from physical to digital. Because the physical experience, what we feel, what one can enjoy, cannot be extended through the digital. So therefore, we are maintaining the sales through our 700 plus stores in a very fantastic manner. It's happening very well. When I joined the organization, when I opened up the first store, the turnover was 50 crore. Today we are to 2,100 crore plus, and growing year on year about 25%. So it's working fine. So why should I just change over because there's a marketplaces available and just shift the Samsonite availability from physical to digital? And therefore, this works fine for us. However, it works so well for Chayos. So Raghav definitely should make the best use of the technology and make the things better for them. Another part is that, like for example, if at all I have technology coming in which can better out my replenishment cycle. If my replenishment happening the following day, instead of that, if I can replenish the same day by connecting my warehouse to the store, to the logistic, that definitely comes as a blessing. And therefore, that would be a very selective pick from our side to pick the technology. So technology should be an enabler rather than just making a statement. Although Samsung being a global company, we have got Samsung Europe, Samsung at US, Samsung Japan, and Samsung Asia. And amongst the Asian towns, Asian countries, Samsung India is the fastest growing country today. And we are accessible to the technology. We are accessible to the lot of in things happening worldwide. But we are very selective here in India to make use of it to the best of our experience. That's it.
Thank you so much. Vipul, just continuing the same topic, we are seeing um, behavior shift in consumers' mind today. And the trend is that the consumers are increasingly becoming comfortable shopping online, which is not new, but I think the new normal that we are living in now, coming out of a flat screen world, I think we are we are seeing consumers becoming more and more online frenzy when it comes to shopping. I think last 2.5 years has been an experience renaissance. I'm sure you would have also experienced that. So, um, do you think with this trend, retailers will need to have a more robust online commerce strategy or online commerce presence to see success? And how will this impact the future of retail and omnichannel, what we are calling as Omnichannel 2.0?
Yeah, so I think from our point of view, most retailers are already recognizing and pretty much transforming the way they think, and the importance of the omni-channel, in specifically for most of these retailers, having an app that allows shoppers to either build on their basket that they would have otherwise purchased or buy more frequently, or in some cases get a wider assortment, or have differential benefits like delivery at home that's faster, or just just planning for there are lots of shoppers who actually think when they think about what to buy, they sort of feed it into the app and then choose to place the order when they feel like, and not necessarily at that time. So they actually build the basket over a period of time. So all of these things we are seeing practically every retailer pick up. Just that the life cycle of the slightly more digital aspects of otherwise brick and mortar retailers is very, very varied. So of course they have all, what the e-commerce first industry does as a benchmark, if I may. But there are very, very specific, interesting nuances that they are picking up that make it relevant. They have their loyal customer base. They know what these people buy because of their own CRM. And in most cases, the Omni platforms are well interlinked with the brick and mortar CRM. But then they look at portfolio. They look at try to figure out how can they be competitive vis-a-vis the e-commerce first players, and what benefits can they offer. And that's making a lot of difference. I think there is a massive amount of work still that needs to be done to get the ecosystem of Omni platforms to be comparable to the digital first platforms, especially when it comes to leveraging spends to drive better consumer awareness, better consumer journeys or shopper journeys, to monetize some of those journeys, to share and do much better work on data insight. I think the world of how much can be done with data and how much insight and action can be derived from that, there is a world of difference between brick and mortar retailers operating on Omni and the e-commerce first players. And I think changing mindset on that is really, really important. One of the things that I'm seeing is almost every retailer now has a separate team doing Omni for them. It's not being done by the same the same business. So that shows the mindset shift too. But there's so much more to be done. And I think as manufacturers, we welcome this change because what it does is that it creates more opportunities for us to build new categories, to provide solutions to shoppers that were not otherwise possible. And it makes it a level playing field in many ways, which is very, very useful.
Thanks, Vipul. Thank you so much. Shadashiv, your thoughts on the impact of omni-channel and in the future of retail. How do you see the role of omni-channel playing in disrupting the future of retail as we know it?
Yeah, so I'll possibly share 3 experiences I've had in the last few days. I think yesterday I got a call from my colleague to say that he wants to recommend someone who's visually challenged for a job. So that's one experience. Second, today, because I use my driver for very late in the night, I asked him, "Yeah, tum ghar jab I of course give him $100 or $200. So the khana kahan milta hai? Does Swiggy come and deliver?" He stays in a, let's say in Khardanda Road, there's a Gazdar Band. He stays in that area. He says, "हाँ, Swiggy aata hai." He couldn't pronounce Swiggy, but I said, "कहाँ delivery करता है?" तो बोलता है, "I have to come to the main road and then they deliver." And third was this experience where I watched a movie. All of you can guess the movie with 18 people. I mean, it was the last Hindi movie, Lal Singh Chadda, and with 18 people in the audience, and just saw the movie alone with them. So these 3 experiences, I think somewhere I'm trying to give this prologue to kind of respond to you. I think one, the deliveries when they are actually going to, and I think Raghav possibly has a much larger experience there amongst us, when they're able to navigate small and narrow lanes, small and narrow, when delivery is able to navigate, I think there's a whole world waiting out there. Whatever name you want to call them, you want to call them India 2, you want to call the aspiring poor, whatever you want to call them, I think there's a whole world waiting to be taken. And for everyone, right? And you would see some people having hubs. A large retailer in India is putting up hub and spoke where they're putting spokes in these places. So I think there's a large market waiting out there. If people can respond to Chayos in Dharavi, then I think there's a whole world waiting out there. Second really is this whole thing about, and I've been in modern trade, I've been with Big Bazaar. I think we used to carry the label of modernity with pride on our shoulder. I think that pride is gone. That arrogance is gone. Because if you go to any store, I went to Barabanki, I went to small towns, everyone has modernized. Yeah? And this modernization came as a wave 2 decades back when I joined modern trade, when they were organized GT and we became modern. I think that modern now, everyone's become modern, so that pride, that label is gone. So it's back to getting organized, to your point, Neil. And that organized would mean, I think today the GT is giving a fight back to retail because they're modernized and they now know the customer saying, "Pramod, aapka shampoo aa gaya. Raghav, aapka cold cream aa gaya." Now that is a different level of organization which one needs to get. And last but not the least, I think the point, example of the call on the job which I told, I think how does technology include, I know it's a cliched word, but having been in a program which tried to make a hypermarket accessible to 14 disabilities, and we managed to do 150 stores then, I think technology has to help include. People with disabilities, only one example. Urban poor is another example. But there are so many sections of society whom we need to include, not in a condescending way, onboarding them, encouraging them, unboxing things for them. So I feel there's a lot of these 3 trends which I'll say. One, it's getting organized, not modern any longer. Second, if you can navigate the narrows and smalls in delivery, then I think there's a very different world waiting for us. And if technology can really help include as an agenda, inclusion as an agenda, I think there's a big world waiting out there.
So should we say the term modern trade can be recoined as enabled retail, or modern retail should be called enabled retail or tech-driven retail?
I leave it to you. I think somewhere, I think we should not miss the word consumer. I think Vipul just mentioned category creation and we were just exchanging some notes. I think it's to go back. See, technology, I mean, to take your analogy, I don't think we'll go out in the food there and say there's Mexican, there is Indian, and there's technology. I don't think so. Technology is all around in the buffet, warming up the food. Even this is technology to me, right? Water in a small form. So I think technology is not something which is served in a separate buffet counter. So to my mind, I think whatever term, and you are the better person to judge there, have the word consumer somewhere so that we remind ourselves saying, whatever happens, it's really the consumer whom we are serving.
Absolutely. And continuing with that, Pramod, the question to you is, so putting consumer at the heart of retail strategy, retail has always faced two perennial issues: single view of customer or consumer data, and single view of inventory. Do you think the need for adoption of simple and cost-effective technology is a need of the art to solve this challenge?
So absolutely, it's in the context of the fact that technology being an enabler, there should be masses who should be able to imbibe it amongst retailers. So it has to be something very, very simple, something which is really cost effective for, for the retailers to imbibe it and for the consumers to be able to consume using the technology. So it has to be something very, very simple. So, in context of the industry that I represent, and from the statement that you started, so you started with food for thought. So what is really happening is it is just going in the other direction now. It's not food for thought, thought for food. So that's what a Zomato or a Swiggy does. It just instigates that thought for food at the time you need it. So they have been basically collecting their data over the months or the years or your moments of truth, and they understand you to the extent wherein they are able to instigate, hey, it's time for food, and this is the food that you're going to eat. Let me just instigate you, and that thought for food gets into your smartphone. So, your connected device. Now, typically, that is what has been happening in helping us on our side of the industry. So, for us, the reach was limited to the physical spaces where the content was being shown. Today, we are able to instigate consumers or to suggest that we are able to get onto segmentation of the consumers and going around them, suggesting that this is the genre that you watched last time. Would you like to watch it again? A very simple data, which is very, very simple technology wherein you are able to reach them instead of the simple economics of push and pull marketing, wherein you are able to push that, hey, this is the genre that you watched last time. Would you like to watch it again? Now, what's really happening is that is expanding the market in the parlance that we had never imagined. Think about a Kashmir Files. Probably it had a very small segmentation of consumers whom one could reach. But that became a far larger movie because the people we were able to touch, they started talking about it. And the whole social media, if I could say, if I could use the word, ended up making into a far bigger content, which got consumed by millions of people, which may not have happened in the yesteryears when that technology was not there. The second factor is convenience. So, we sell tickets for a living, the cinema tickets. Now, these cinema tickets were being made available at the box offices in the yesteryears. Today, I have zillions of box office. Each smartphone is a box office for me. Each smartphone is a box office. And that box office makes it so convenient for consumers to end up making a purchase decision and then going for the content. Coming on to the OTT, and it has been debated a lot of times that OTT has actually been onslaughting the large cinema screens. Actually not true. What OTT has been doing is that it is, one, expanding the market, second, making you consume more and more content. The habits have basically changed, the behavioral patterns have changed, and probably, pandemic, on that side of pandemic, it has just helped us to understand our consumers better, the amount of content that they end up consuming. What we are offering, a part of that content actually goes to out-of-home entertainment, wherein we are able to offer a far more immersive experience, which will now, in the years to come, shall be powered by augmented reality and virtual reality. Technically, if you're watching a film on one side of the screen, the balance of the ambient sides could be, dressed up with augmented reality and virtual reality to make the whole experience far more immersive. And the consumers are going to come in for that once in a while. That once in a while is a very, very large populace in India. And that populace is increasing. The time that they're spending on content is increasing, and those behavioral patterns are helping us being able to monetize better from the business. Very, very simple technology, helping us grow faster, helping us reach more people, and probably showing us the future of what the industry would hold for us.
Neil, I take back my example of Lal Singh Chadda. I didn't know this is an industry veteran here. He'll give a whack on me.
Thank you, thanks for sharing the experience there. And Raghav, we spoke about movies, so I got to come back to you for chai. So here, just wanted to understand. So, in your opinion, do you think more people are talking about it today than what it was a decade back? I mean, is it because of the new experience renaissance that we've gone through, or do you think this was just a need of the hour? It was just coming. You've built a company which is extremely tech enabled or tech savvy, and tech leading to chai. That's kind of quite an India story. So wanted to understand your thoughts there.
Can you just repeat what exactly was the question?
So the question is, do you think the need for adoption of simple and cost-effective technology is the need of the hour?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the technology is there, the customers are there. We as retailers, as brands, have to make ourselves more accessible. And for retailers, if I talk about it, it's again going back to Sadashiv's point, right? Start from the customer. Where is the customer? What do they want? How can I solve a problem for the customer? I was reading in a book recently that a product can be like a vitamin or it can be like a painkiller, right? But it has to be one of those. It has to either solve some problem, be a good to have for the long term, or it can be something that instantly solves that problem and kills a pain point for the customer. So when you're doing that, technology gives you accessibility. Technology gives you that right channel to be able to solve that problem for the customer. Make it extremely seamless for their pain point to be solved with least number of steps. I think that's how technology is going to actually help us to answer your question.
Thanks, Raghav.
Would like to add something to the
Yeah,
Chayo's
sure.
comment.
Sure.
See, I stopped taking tea a couple of years before. After the whole thing has switched over to the machine tea, the actual taste of the tea was lost, and then I stopped. But thanks to Chayos, when they came in, I restarted the tea consumption, just because, see, with technology, without technology, the product has to be, first of all, getting connected to the consumer. So it's not about how you reach out and in what manner and what path, but the product has to be appreciated by the customer. So I came back to drinking tea just because they brought the taste back. So product remains the key, whichever way you make it to reach.
Yeah, the technology works best when it is invisible and it's delivering a delight to the customer.
I think not a bad idea. Could be a different panel some other day about chai on metaverse. Could be a different conversation, a different panel some other day as to how we all envision chai on metaverse. John, this is something which you will love it. So the question or the topic to you is the millennial and Gen Z consumers interact with your brand from their handheld mobile devices, and they will continue looking to influencers for brand and product recommendations. Do you think this requires a change in importance in terms of the information, distribution channel, and investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in London last week, and I was in 2 concept stores. I was in Adidas, and I was in Puma. And what was interesting, these are prime real estate in London. You can't get any better footfall. And they had absolutely transformed these stores. There was not one till. Okay, so there's not one till. They don't want you to purchase anything in store. They don't care about the UPT, the ATV, the footfall conversion. What they're trying to do is to get that Gen Z brand to engage with the brand. They don't care where they buy it. Well, if they see Rihanna, if they see one of the ambassadors wearing a top, fast fashion dictates that cycle's got to be done and has got to be delivered in 6 weeks. It's not the traditional spring, summer, autumn, winter. Retailers have got to adapt to that. But it was a really illuminating experience that you could walk out in a Arsenal top and run out in an Emirates statement in the Emirates Stadium in a virtual environment. Now that's impactful. That's an experience that you will never forget, rather than just going into store and going, have you got this in a 42? And I think that the explosion of data that we're going to see over the next 3, 4, 5 years is going to be so impactful for Gen Z that focus on insight and what you can find from data, from outliers, covariates. Because the volumes of data, you're going to be analyzing huge volumes of data that we've never seen before. And there's going to be black data. There's going to be dark data, which is absolutely valueless to your business. So you've got to make sure that your insight is aligned with that Gen Z and that overall experiential programmer works.
Thanks, John. People coming to you with the same question, because you deal with this set of dark data that we spoke about, the unstructured data, and then the need for structured data, and the humongous distribution channel that you have and the investment that you put behind it. The shift in the consumer behavior from the Gen Z, how are you rethinking your strategies?
So, to be fair, if I talk about how Gen Z consumers are shifting, the fact is that many new digital-first brands are showing us the way. And being out there and seeing what they're doing and at times stealing with pride is really the need of the hour, because many of these brands, and I mean, Raghav's an example, right? They really live and breathe and understand technology a lot better, because they have founders who understand it, and their consumers are like them. So, you know, the first thing to do is to be willing to learn from others. You spoke about influencer marketing. I mean, some random data that I read suggests that it could be close to 1,000 crore market today, just the world of influencer marketing. And it's arguably relatively unregulated, and exploding at its seams in terms of what it can do. We have, of course, mainstream influencers, but every e-commerce beauty player has got its own set of influencers within its platform. So, you know, there's platform-level influencer marketing happening. The amount of digital or otherwise innovation that's possible here is tremendous. And the funny thing is that every single shopper is consuming this like there's no tomorrow. So, you know, in a manner of speaking, it also, in some form of fashion, makes a slightly more, a strong way of doing word of mouth. It's a very sophisticated way of doing word of mouth. What would happen naturally or seamlessly in the past is now driven very systematically. And it gives a lever to a marketeer to think about how they can drive word of mouth quite interestingly. And yeah, it's there. It's really big and powerful. It's making big impact. And if we don't learn how to do it, we'll be lost very quickly. So we have to really realize that we are behind the curve and look to strive to improve.
Narendra, Samsonite as a brand in yesteryears had used, probably influencer marketing was not even a thing in order to capture market at that point in time. How are you changing your strategies in the Gen Z world?
You mean to say in the area of influencing the customers?
Mm-hmm.
Frankly speaking, certain brands, they live by the heritage value, the faith created over generations, because this brand is about now today 115-year-old. And generations after generations have been using. And we have customers who were gifted by their great-grandfather the same bag what he used about 70 years back. In my office, I've got something which is 100-year-old, a bag. So these kind of brands, frankly speaking, should follow the route and continue to do good about innovations. Like everything new coming in attracts the eyeballs. That is the influencer. Like, for example, the bag without the wheel, imagine how people used to travel and move. The moment Samsonite has put the first wheel in 1974, the people got eased out. Secondly, the same horizontal bag with 45-degree tilt body, you lifting your bag, trying to pull your bag, to compared with the bag now which walks along with you. So these are our influencers. The new technology, the innovative way to do things is our way to influence people. That is how you must have seen Samsung never uses any brand ambassador. We're not against that idea. It's not that the brand ambassador will do damage to the brand, but the brand is so iconic, so it has got such a strong heritage value that if you do innovations, you end up reaching out to your target audience. So that is our approach.
Thanks, Anindra, for sharing that. Shadash, a question to you in terms of your take on AI, the automation technology, and the new social media trends that, according to many, will continue to play a part in how the retail industry evolves and the business continues in the current decade. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. As a moderator, you have the audacity to take the omni-channel warning of time up both on the digital and the physical front, so I'll keep it short. I think there are three parts, and I'm going by the logic to say whatever I know of AI, very little. I think you're training AI. So I think there are three primary roles, and I just leave it at headlines because of lack of time. One, I think we've come through a stage of using social media to do clanning. We used to build clans. This is my brand clan, this is my retail clan. I think it's genuinely has to move from clanning to community building. And in a community, all of us are in community in some form or the other, I'm part of a group, but I'm also left alone to my individuality. So I think that's one big shift which I would expect AI to help, saying that, okay, you're part of a community and not a clan. The clan, everyone forgets who they are and just become part of one brand. Second, I think it should help internally listen. I think that's what we used to do when we used to work the markets in the FMCG. And we possibly would, I would do it, Damodar I see who used to do it in retail. But I think AI has to help us listen more. And we should not get overawed saying there are millions of data. Even if it makes me listen to 5 customers in a day, I think I'll be a much richer leader. And lastly, I think AI has, in some way, has to allow what we were taught in college to say post-purchase dissonance. I think it has to reduce the dissonance. So if I'm buying a vacuum dryer or a vacuum cleaner, which I don't understand, and my first experience, it breaks down, I think AI should be able to gauge me and saying, well, these are the 3 pain points. Don't worry, you've taken a good decision, but these are the ways I can help you. So I would say these 3 things, moving from planning to community, making sure that we are listening more as an organization, and third, to remove any kind of dissonance, especially for the Gen Z people, because they're experiencing many new products. This is the generation, at least my child once asked me, haldi yellow hoti hai lal? Is it yellow or red turmeric? So we are talking about that generation. So without condescending on such queries, how do we help them reduce the dissonance is possibly the role of AI and tech, I would say.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And the last question to the panel, and I'll open it to the entire panelist, all the panelists here. Pramod, starting with you, the question remains the same. Have the priorities of the end customers changed post-pandemic? And what are some of the stark examples that you have come across?
So, they're changing very fast, very dynamically. So I'll just take a cue from John. He was suggesting about the data being available and massive amount of black data being available. The deciphering of data is very much possible by people of our age group or the people who are basically there working around with us. The problem that is happening, it's a problem statement. Much of the things that are happening on the digital highway in the companies which are not the new ones which have come off the ground, is not by the Gen Z. So, this Gen Z, the word Gen Z that we're talking about, has to be by Gen Z, for Gen Z, from Gen Z. The moment you're able to get these people to work out their own strategy, to work and evaluate the data, and then come to that point to be able to use it for the benefit of Gen Z, then only the success would come in. And this is a very, very fast-changing, dynamic digital highway, which can only be captured by the Gen Z guys when it is by, from, for. So all the three have to fit in. Could decipher it for them, but the way their mind works, when he spoke about red haldi, so, think about that Gen Z. That Gen Z is thinking about that red haldi also. And I don't know, maybe that red haldi exists somewhere in some part of the world. So, that's where we are basically, somewhere that statement happens to be a problem statement. We hear a lot of people, and John would have heard much more than that of me, people suggesting that, hey, on their resume, I have 30 years of internet experience. That means the guy must have worked in the US military, because that's where it got invented. So, it's not that old. It's a 7-year-old thing wherein you're talking about a digital highway, people talking about in very large institutions or in very large companies that, hey, I have 20 years experience. But not on digital. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. The digital, the way it has got to be imbibed is by the Gen Z, for the Gen Z, from the Gen Z. Then it makes really an impact which will go a long way for the coming generations, maybe.
Thank you so much. That's a second hashtag that I'm gonna take by the Gen Z, for the Gen Z. That's gonna be the second hashtag after the internet chai. Vipul, your thoughts on the same topic. I mean, what are the stark changes that you have seen?
A lot. Many of them reversing as well. Many of them staying for good. Health and well-being is a big one. And the need for convenience, the need for at home. So, I mean, I don't think you can generalize, but the one thing that's changing for sure is that nothing is staying still. It is just rapidly evolving, and the ability of shoppers to accept new ways of doing things and transforming overnight is just very, very quick. So the ability to change quickly itself is changing.
Interesting. John, your thoughts on this, the changes that you have seen.
I think
I'm sure there's quite a list, but if you can give us the examples that you think are more visible post-pandemic.
I think the biggest thing that I've seen during from a UK perspective is Gen Z, specifically having 2 teenage girls, is swapping clothes, not buying clothes. So once they've been to the prom, they will then swap that. And there's a startup unicorn in the UK called Depop that started up just over 4 years ago, and it sold a couple of weeks ago for 1.6 billion to a US company that specializes in distressed old clothing called Etsy. And I think we're going to see a lot of proliferation of that, of the charity shop coming off the high street and that Gen Z moving into swapping of clothes, because they're much more environmentally aware than previous generation.
All right, so with that we'll wrap up the panel. Thanks to all the panelists for sharing your thoughts, and I'm sure you would have found the discussion interesting, and I didn't see many people leaving for lunch, so that gives us the confidence that okay, we had been able to put up with an engaging conversation. Thank you everyone.